Hey guys, I'm back with another video. This is going to be very similar to my last tutorial that I just did, except it's the bodysuit version. So to get started, just take your yarn and hook. I'm using the same sizes that I used in my last tutorial. And then I'm just going to be chaining a total of 9. So this is going to be almost the bikini bottom, so this is where your bodysuit joins. So if you need it to be a larger size, this is going to fit a small to medium. So I just chained an additional 3 and blocked off the end of the row with my finger. Then I'm going right back in with a double crochet and placing it where I blocked it off. So I am just going back through the row, placing a double crochet. Once I've finished, I'm chaining 3, flipping over my work, and then placing a double crochet in the first chain of the row. And then I'm going to go back through this row and place 1 double crochet in every chain. So once you reach the end, just make sure you're not skipping any chains. So just place it through the very last chain 3 of the row. Then chain an additional 3, flip over your work to begin on the next row. I'm just repeating the same process of placing a double crochet in the very first chain of the row, placing double crochets in every single chain remaining, and then once you finish chain 3, I'm doing one last row of just basic double crochets. So I'm having a total of 4 rows before I flip it over, chain 3, and now I'm going to start adding a double crochet in the first chain of the chain 3. So normally you skip that chain because it's not the first chain of your row, it's a part of your chain 3, but I am placing a double crochet through that. So then I just went through the row as usual, and once you reach the very end, you are going to be placing 1 more double crochet in the very last chain of the row. So that is the pattern for increasing chains in your row that I'm going to be using for the first half of this tutorial. This is going to create the bikini kind of triangle that you need. So you're just going to continue that same pattern of adding 2 additional chains per row until you get the size that you need. So this is where it's kind of tricky and hard to make a tutorial about a bodysuit because it really depends on what your body shape and size is. I'm just going to go ahead and show you exactly what I'm doing, and you could kind of measure it to yourself and make adjustments as needed. So far I did a total of 14 rows, which includes the 4 rows of just plain chains without increasing the chain size. So now this is where it hits the widest point of my hip. So I do want my bodysuit to be a little bit wider at this point. So on my very next row, I'm going to be chaining 3. And then I'm going to be, instead of just adding 1 additional chain in the very first chain of the chain 3, I'm going to be adding 2. So there's going to be a total of 3 additional chains coming out of that 1 very first chain in the row. So then I'm just going to go along the remainder of this row as usual, placing 1 double crochet in every chain. And then once I reach the very end, through that very last chain beneath, I am going to be placing 3 double crochets. So I'm doing this on the 15th row. If your hips are longer, wider, do this wherever the widest point of your hip is. So it's important to just measure against yourself. I am doing it on the 15th row though. So then I'm going to go back and continue adding chains. This is the only row that I'm adding the 2 extra chains on each side. So I'm just going to chain 3 and then go back to the pattern I was doing right before it, just adding 1 extra double crochet in the beginning and in the ending of the row. So I'm just going to go along the row as usual, placing 1 double crochet in every chain until I reach the very last chain. So once I'm at the very last chain, I am going to be just placing 2 double crochets through that last chain. And then I'm going to continue this up until I reach past the width of my hip. So I'm measuring it against myself and continuing that same pattern of adding just 1 additional chain in the first and last chains of the row until I pass the length of my hip. So I'm just going to do that. I think I did a total of 3 additional rows of this. So I am just going to kind of speed through it. So I'm just measuring it against myself, and I'm going to stop these rows of adding an additional chain until I reach the very top of my hip. So as you can see from the widest point of my hip where I added 3 double crochets in the very last and the very first chain, I did an extra 3 rows. So now it honestly depends if your waistline is smaller than your hip. So if you need to just go straight up, that's totally fine. My waistline is smaller than the width of my hips, so I am going to start kind of hourglassing the pattern back inward. So instead of adding a extra chain in that first chain 3, I'm just going right into the very first chain of the row, and I'm just going to be doing this row, just placing 1 double crochet in every chain. I'm not adding, I'm not subtracting chains, I am just doing 1 normal row of double crochets. So again, I reached the end of that row. I'm just placing 1 normal row of double crochets. I did chain 3, flip it over, I'm starting on my next row. So now I'm just doing plain double crochets where I am going to be skipping the very first chain. So I'm going to be skipping the very first chain and the very last chain of every row. So I am just going to go through the row as normally and place a double crochet in every chain until I reach the very last chain, which I would normally chain through, but I am going to skip it and just place my very last chain in the last chain of the row. So then I am going to be doing a few more rows of this just to get to the width of my waist. So honestly, it depends how wide your waist is, but just continue that pattern, or if you don't need to skip any chains to reach your waist width, then honestly it's up to you. I am just going to be continuing that for my size. So I did do a total of 4 rows where I skipped the very first chain and skipped the very last chain of every row. So now I am just going to be continuing upward to do my torso length. So now for my next row, I'm not going to be adding or subtracting any chains, but this is completely up to you. So yeah, this is what I'm doing for my next row. I'm just going through every single chain in the row. So again, this is the end of the row. I'm just showing you I'm placing a double crochet in every chain. And I did accidentally cut my yarn, so I just tied it together like that. So do as many rows as you need to do. It honestly depends on your size. But so yeah, so that's all I'm doing. I just chained 3 and I'm flipped it over, and I'm just showing you this is the start of my next row. Just a basic row, not adding or subtracting any chains. Okay, so I did 5 rows of basic rows of double crochet without adding or subtracting any chains. And that's as much as I need before I start on the separation between my cups. And please keep in mind that when you're wearing this, it is going to stretch a little bit. So maybe when you're measuring it, just hold on yourself. Maybe leave one row space away from where you would want it to hit your bust line. But it's really up to you. This is kind of a harder tutorial to explain because, I mean, you can make exactly what I do, but then you'll get my size. Like, you need to measure it to your size. So once you have the hip size, do as many plain rows as you need to reach your bust. I am going to start separating the cups on the very next row. So I'm going to chain 3 and then do just a basic row as you've been doing, except for the row that you want to start separating your cups. I am counting to the middle or as close to the middle as you can if you have an even number, and I'm going to place 2 double crochets in the very middle chain so that we can start branching off and then not have it look awkward where the V starts. And if you don't understand what I'm trying to say, then I'll just go ahead and show you. So I'm going to just place basic double crochets until I reach the row that I decided will be the middle of the bodysuit. So I'm going to pause and come back once I reach this. So now I've reached the row, I mean the chain that I picked to be the middle, and now I'm going to place 2 double crochets total in the same row. So you should have 2 double crochets coming out of your middle row, and then you're just going to go along the remainder of the row and place 1 double crochet in every chain as usual. So once you're finished with that row, then this is where we're going to start only crocheting back and forth in between the middle chain. So you're just going to go along one side of the top, we're going to cut it, and then come back and do the other side. So I'm going to start off as normal, chain 3, flip over my work. I'm not adding or subtracting any chains, I'm just going to go into the first chain of the row, place my double crochet, and then I'm going to be placing double crochets in every chain until I reach the chain that has the 2 double crochets. So I've reached the chain that has the 2 double crochets coming out of the one chain. So all I'm going to do is place a double crochet in the first chain, and then I'm going to leave this chain for the other side, and then I'm going to just chain 3. And to work on my bikini top, it is important to measure it along yourself. This is a low cut V, so I will be probably chaining 1 or 2 more rows of just basic rows without subtracting any chains to make the triangle. So it really depends on what size you are. I am again just going to be doing probably 2 more rows, and then I will start skipping chains on the first and last chain of every row. But I'm just going to go ahead and do my 2 more rows until I reach the time to start decreasing chains in the row to form the triangle top.